Welcome to another episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast, Marriage, or as they said in Princess Bride, Marriage. Marriage, how important is it as an American institution? Some people think it's not important at all. I beg to differ, but we're going to discuss it with a young man named Aldo Buttazzoni. He works for PragerU. He has written a column on this. He's our guest next.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
So Aldo Buttazzoni is a young man, just graduated from college recently, was a fraternity president. He's just a guy, but he works for PragerU. He's a guy of deep faith, and he's going to tell us why he thinks that a lot of young Gen Z women and celebrities and non-celebrities alike are getting on social media and saying, marriage, it stinks. I've been there, done that. Or I don't need a man. I don't need marriage. I'm just fine on my own. But are they really? And is this really what women want? It's a great conversation. Stay tuned for it. Aldo Buttazzoni is our guest. In the meantime, do you think your face enjoyed the summer? I mean, you enjoyed the summer, but what about your skin? Here's Ella from Rockford, Illinois. She says, I have both age and acne spots, and this stuff is actually fading both of them. This serum is worth every penny. What is she talking about? The dark spot corrector from Genucel. Now, this is a must-have after all the months we just spent in the heat and humidity. You got sunspots, brown spots, discoloration, red blotches. They will all disappear while you watch right in front of your eyes. And here's the Genucel amazing guarantee. You'll see results day one or your money back. So take advantage of this Genucel most popular package, which now includes the dark spot corrector plus the classic Genucel bags and puffiness treatment, which I love, and immediate effects, all at about 70% off. So you get the world's best skincare and you get it completely risk-free. Did you know that Genucel offers a compliments guarantee? They'll give you your money back if you don't get compliments on how much younger you look. I've never had to ask for my money back. It's simple. Go to Genucel.com/Michele. Do it today. Start looking years, even decades younger. Genucel, GENUCEL.com/Michele. Say goodbye to the dark spots, the bags and puffiness, the crow's feet. Genucel.com/Michele with one L. Genucel.com/MICHELE. You'll see results day one and you'll get compliments everywhere you go. That's a guarantee. Genucel.com/Michele. Genucel.com/MICHELE. Marriage. What about it? Do you like being married? Would you rather not be married? Well, let's have a discussion that's pretty damn honest. That's next. I am pleased to welcome Aldo Buttazzoni to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
I read your article and it really struck me. And I had seen some of these videos from young women saying, gosh, my life is so good. I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm single. I'm cooking my meal. I've got my dog. Who needs marriage? When did this start looking like a trend to you?
Well, I think these videos that have gone viral is very recent, but the main thing that I talked about in the piece, and really the sentiment that I think these videos really encapsulate, is the idea that men and women do not need each other, right? This idea that women can do everything that man can do. They can be perfectly happy and fulfilled on their own without a man. And I think that's really cultivated into an almost a resentment of men. So I think really this started many, many years ago, maybe with the feminist movement, but this whole idea of total gender equality, of not needing men, of the genders being completely separate from one another. And I think this is just really the extension of that. And these videos are really reflecting that sentiment. And it's sad to see because men and women do need each other. We're very unique and complementary beings. And I think the promotion of the opposite of that is really sad. And I think it's going to lead men and women to be a lot less happy, which I think you can see in the data. You know, men and women aren't dating as much. We're not getting married as much. Women are more unhappy. Men are more unhappy. This is not a good situation. And I think, pretending like it is, pretending like women are so much more happy is just really a sad thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that these women feel like they need to post this as though they're trying to prove and go public with this notion that, see how much better off I am. I feel so strongly. I must prove it. I must show you. But I can remember a time in my life where I wasn't seeing anyone. I was in my 30s, early 30s, and I thought, shoot, I'm just going to need to find a surrogate and have a baby on my own and do this because I really wanted to have a child. I'm really glad that I didn't. I don't hold it against. I have friends who have done that, so I don't hold it against them. But I'm really glad that I didn't. I found someone. I was fortunate to find someone who I consider the perfect match for me. And it is hard work, marriage. And I think that's what people don't want to do anymore on any level. And maybe that's part of this. It's hard work. It's compromise, but damn, the rewards outweigh that for sure. But how much do you think that notion of work and commitment and compromise plays into this not wanting it?
Probably a big part. I'm dating right now. I'm not married yet, so I can't speak from firsthand experience about marriage. But, I always say to people that love is not just a fleeting emotion, right? It's a choice that you make every single day. And it gets hard, right? There's times that you don't feel super loving. You don't feel like you want to do the work, but that's what marriage is, right? You can go year, 2 years, 3 years at a time when things are really rough. But that's exactly why you get married. That's exactly why you find a partner that's going to be with you for life. Because when you're at your lowest or when things get difficult, you're going to need someone that's not going to turn the other direction and walk away. You're going to have someone that's there for you when the times get tough. And unfortunately, in dating, what we're seeing today is, with all these things like, the dating apps, or, it creates this idea of, it's very easy to find the next best thing. Maybe even with streaming services, it's downstream from that, there's always something there for you. So it's very easy that when things get tough, at least in my generation, I see this as soon as they run into a little red flag, they look at all the other options that could be better. And so I think that that is really playing a big part.
It's really interesting. I also know some single people who have used those apps who have found them to be rather disappointing, or just, they'll meet someone and it'll last for a little while. And then I do have a pair of good friends who met on an app and who are married with 2 children and going through life together. So I suppose that's just a new, meeting at the bar is meeting on the app, something like that. So there's the work component. And then there's what you said. The minute you run into a little bit of trouble or the bliss seems to be disappearing, I think that we make choices to marry people sometimes that aren't based on what really a marriage should be about. For instance, if you're just super lustful of a person, you just can't get enough of them physically, you got to marry them. But that doesn't last forever. And now where are you left? Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe it's the blissful and you think it's going to be blissful forever. And it's just not. It's a fact. Maybe some people have that. I don't know. But I'm just wondering how, we are so quick, as you said, to dispose of a marriage and say, been there, done that. It didn't work. So therefore marriage isn't for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your first point, I don't know, waiting to have sex before marriage might not be for everybody, but I will say to, my friends in college, and I saw this firsthand pretty recently, I just graduated 2 years ago. It's really easy to feel like you love somebody, right? When you said you're very lustful and you're engaging in that stuff, it's really easy to feel like that's the person for you when you have all these hormones running and stuff like that. So that is a benefit of that. But I think also when you look at these women that are really talking about this, what I think it is they're speaking from personal experience. So when they really hype up divorce, when they say divorce is the best thing ever, all these men were horrible, I think that's more of a reflection of their bad judgment calls and their judge of character than it is about the institution of marriage. So it's, I don't know, interesting. I don't know about their personal lives, but I think there's more to that than they're letting on.
So you just got out of college a couple of years ago. You're obviously a young man. Are you of this? How many people in your age group do you think are waiting for marriage before having sex? I mean, they're going to hold off until they're married, because I can tell you in my generation, that was not necessarily a popular stance.
Well, it hasn't changed. It's not popular. I don't know anybody. I maybe 1 or 2 friends that are, but for the most part, it's not happening. But I think the more important part, and you talked about this, is people are dating for the wrong reasons, and that's leading them to prolonged, moment or prolonged relationships that aren't going to work out in the long run. Right? You date somebody and you marry someone for values, not
Yeah.
not really even shared interests. Right? Just because you have the same hobby doesn't mean that you're going to be a good match with somebody. It's more dating for values because, like
Yes.
we talked about, when the times get tough, when you're down, right? When you need somebody that's going to be your partner and pick you back up. It's not because you both like to ski, right? It's not because you both like going to the mountains hiking. It's because
Right.
you have shared values, whether that's a love of God, whether it's, a shared religion, a shared faith, your goals to have a family, to not have kids, to have kids, whatever it is. It's because you've picked someone that shares and aligns with you on those values. And I don't think enough people are doing that today. It is because of lust. It is because of hobbies or, shared interests. And I think once people realign why they're picking their partners, I think we're going to see a lot better outcomes and longer relationships at the least.
Realign and values are two of the words you used in that last sentence that you said. Values, I don't even know if people are identifying their values. Because we have so much at our access, we can sort of say, gosh, right now I value a hamburger app delivered to the door. But I don't know that people are looking at the big picture values. There are so many things out there. You mentioned religion, faith, there's family, there's health, there's happiness, there's security, there's integrity, all of these things that you can value. But you sort of got to narrow it down to I've narrowed mine down to 5 that are the lanes in which I drive in my life. And I don't know if that exercise is being taken enough. If people are really identifying those values that they are going to live and die by for the foreseeable future. What do you think? How did you identify yours?
I think every problem that we are seeing in contemporary culture is all downstream from a departure from God. Honestly, whether it's the drag stuff or the LGBTQ or the dating crisis or the lack of masculinity, right? All of this is, I think people do not have an identity. And so it's very easy to choose an identity or get a sense of self-worth from the material stuff in society instead of getting your sense of identity and your sense of self from God. And I think a departure from faith has really led us to every single problem that we are seeing. It can all be traced back to that. So that's what I think. But what are your 5? I'm curious. What are your 5 lanes?
So my 5 are family, integrity, security, and that's every kind of security, financial security, security of my family, health, and happiness. And so, I wouldn't say I have been sort of on a somewhat faith path lately. This isn't, look, I was raised Catholic. I changed religions to Episcopalian. My kids are baptized Lutheran. So it's not like I'm this, I'm Christian, but I'm not diehard. But I'm opening my mind to it. So I'm curious to find out how you, as a young man, found faith and found it to be so instrumental to your life.
So I grew up in a Roman Italian Catholic family, and I don't have one of these stories that I feel like you hear a lot where I was really religious and then I fell away from it and then I came back and it changed my life. I never strayed away. These values were instilled in me at a very young age, and I just found that they worked. So there was really no reason for me to depart from them. They had built a strong nuclear family that I was lucky enough to have 2 great parents and, a couple siblings. And it always worked for me. Faith does give me a sense of identity and a sense of purpose. And it gives me, someone to look up to, a God and faith, and it just works. It just works. And I can say when I see friends or when I see societies or cultures, anything that don't do that, I don't see anything good, right? I don't see anything that I want to emulate. So thankfully I've never strayed away, but it's always worked for me.
It's unique. I mean, that is, I think, rare this day and age. And I'm kind of sorry to say that because I think clearly you've got wisdom beyond your years. How familiar are you with the streaming series The Chosen?
I've heard about it. That's about it though. I don't know much about it.
Okay. I'm interested in hearing people's thoughts about it because I started watching this, and to me, it's basically teaching the story of Jesus in a way that is very relatable for modern times. The language that they speak, while they maintain certain accents and while it's placed in the correct time frame, the scenery and so forth, the verbiage is very accessible, and they make these people very human. And I found that a very a comfortable way and an entertaining way, if you will, for me to access this story in a way that I hadn't before. So I was just curious to see what you knew about it.
You're not speaking Aramaic with captions?
No, they're not. They're not. They're speaking very much like you and I are right now, with a few exceptions. But that's what makes it, I think, very relatable and has been incredibly popular throughout the world. But that's sort of a sidebar. I wanted to ask you too about this term, toxic masculinity. It seems to me that men are being painted with a very broad brush. You mentioned sort of a lack of masculinity. I think that's happening because men are being told, it's being communicated very strongly to them that masculinity is no longer appreciated, no longer tolerated. What's been your experience?
So I actually just wrapped up filming a new documentary that Prager is going to come out with about masculinity and about this boy crisis in America. But I think it all did start from this idea that men and women are interchangeable, that they don't need each other. And it really came out of the feminist movement with this whole toxic masculinity that teaches people that all things bad in society can be derived from men. And it really teaches young boys that their masculinity is not something that's of value. And not only that, but it's something that is a net negative on society. And so what has that created? That has created weak men. And when you create weak men, it's not, these docile type men. You create bitter men that are resentful, and you create men that lash back out at society. That's why you see, every school shooter is a young man. Really, it's these disaffected young boys that when you don't give them a place to cultivate their masculinity, to feel like they have a purpose or that they're valued in any single way, it destroys the relationships both between men and women. But when it comes to dating, I saw these figures the other day. I can't remember exactly what they were, but it was these Gen Z men. A majority of them feel like, they can't even speak to women out of fear that they are going to feel, or out of fear that they are going to feel like they are creepy, or like they are, weird, or they're off-putting to women. And on the other hand, most women, a majority of women, want to be approached by young men. And so I feel like there is this disconnect that women want the men to come up to them. Men feel like if they do, they're going to be perceived as creepy or weird. And I think that all comes from this toxic masculinity thing. So women do want true masculinity. But I think, unfortunately, we're not cultivating spaces for young men to be able to develop that in a healthy, appropriate way.
It's really interesting. I have a son and a daughter, and I do see some of this happening. There's this idea that if you're a young man and you go off to college and you have relations with a woman, you don't really know. You might get slapped with a lawsuit. You might get called. There are a number of things, and there's this other messaging at the same time of believe all women, and to which I would respond, Duke lacrosse case, and that may only be one, but we've seen it. There are some women who will create these stories for some need. I'm not really sure what it is. I have a hard time. Attention, victimhood mentality, whatever it is. So you're right. There is this massive disconnect. What do you suggest we do about it?
I think that men need to stop giving into it, and I think they need to go into spaces where they have strong male counterparts, strong male peers, to develop that within themselves. That was a big thing for me. I'm an Eagle Scout. I grew up in the Boy Scouts before they started letting women in, before it went woke, and that was a really important and instrumental, thing that I was able to develop being a young man. Being around other young men. I was the president of my fraternity in college. That was another really important thing for me, being around like-minded male peers. And so I would encourage young men not only to get back into the church and, look up to the one man, our Messiah, Jesus Christ, and find in a sense of identity and purpose with him and relate to that, but also find spaces where you're around other like-minded men, and you can really get away from the popular mainstream narratives about what it is to be a man, because that's where you're going to find it with other men. But to the point about, this whole, the sexual assault allegations, that stuff, I saw it firsthand. Like I said, I was in a fraternity in college. We had over 100 members, and that exact thing happened where one of the members had relations with a girl. She ended up regretting it and ended up making one of these cases, took him to court. He was, scholarship stuff was lost, and, drug him through the court system, ended up dropping it after there was provable evidence that it wasn't one of these cases, but ruined someone's reputation. And so we see it with these celebrities, like, there's a recent one with the Russell Brand thing. I don't know if it's true or not yet. I think it's very early, but the accusations are enough to get his YouTube demonetized. The accusations are enough to get people to drop brand deals, to have the court of public opinion paint him as guilty before he's proven innocent. You hear about these high cases, these very big cases, but you don't hear about the young men in college or high school that have their lives and their reputations ruined, not based off of evidence, but based off of accusations. Right. I think when young men look at that, they say it's not worth it to me, right? When they look at the marriage cases of getting divorced, and you go to family court, and the men almost every time they get the short end of the stick. Men look at that and they say, well, marriage isn't for me. Dating isn't for me, because the risk to reward ratio just doesn't look correct. Right. So I can't really blame them. I can't. And it's really sad.
It is really sad. You say in your article, which we will repost on my Twitter feed, my X feed, you say that marriage is one of America's most important, maybe the most important institution. Why do you believe that?
I think it's the most important institution of any strong society, because it's the family unit is really where you derive those values and where you cultivate those values. And I will say that everybody, I say this all the time, everybody is beholden to somebody. And if you're not beholden to a God, if you're not beholden to God, it will be the God of government. And I think when the government is your God, it's much easier for them to take away your freedoms and your rights. And what is the best way to get rid of that? Well, it's to have your influence be your family, right? If your family isn't the one influencing your values, then it's going to be the government. And when you don't have family, I think things start falling apart really fast.
And do you feel, as I do, I shouldn't ask you this in a yes or no form, so I'll rephrase it. What do you think about this idea that there is some sort of plan out there by some people to divide the family so much that they are separate and they don't feel that kinship, and then they do just turn to the government or to teachers or to other institutions that are publicly run for their needs, for their all kinds of needs, certainly not emotional, but for other kinds of needs, and that there is this definite effort to try to break down the family. How do you feel about that?
Well, I would say if there's not a concerted effort, then they're doing a really good job without it. But I definitely think there is a concerted effort to tear apart the family unit. It's the first play in any Marxist playbook. You look at what Stalin did. The first thing he did is he went for the churches and religions of every faith in order to get rid of the family, right? So it's faith influences the family, which influences society. When you get rid of faith, you break down the family, and then you break down society, and then you rebuild it with the government being the center of that. And I definitely think they are doing it. Like I said, if it's not a concerted effort, they're doing a damn good job otherwise. But I think that's why we have to build up the family. We have to build up the church. And I think we'll see society improve as a result.
The Enlightenment, America was built on this idea that we are free by the grace of God and not by the grace of government. And the government would work for us, and we would be in charge, not the government. And it seems to be going the opposite direction, which is really, really troubling to me. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now. It's so nice to meet you, Aldo. I'd love to talk to you again about your documentary that's coming out. And again, you can follow him on all the various platforms, which we've been showing you along the way here. So best of luck with everything. Thanks so much for joining us.
I really enjoyed this. Thanks so much. And I hope to be on again soon.
We will do it. We will do it. He is Aldo Buttazzoni. There are a lot of letters in his name, but he's he's obviously tremendously wise beyond his years, and we will look forward to having you back. Until then, everyone, like him, just be brave and do good, and we will see you next time.